Let's make the Ghostface mask from Scream. So, I was actually on this roll of watching Scream 1 and 2 and Scary Movie 1 and 2, both classics in their own regards, and a part of my childhood. And I just kind of started to think about this franchise. And it's funny how when Scream came out, Ghostface was this jokey, self-aware, and self-parodying killer compared to the classics like Michael Myers or Jason or even Freddy Krueger. But today, enough time has passed and enough significance is credited to the Scream movies that Ghostface actually became one of the classics, especially for people who were young enough to see it. I have a feeling that if you were in your 20s or 30s when Scream came out, you might still have a hard time taking Ghostface seriously. Maybe I'm wrong. But dude, honestly, having watched Scream again for the who knows what time, and yes, I know, I like sophisticated movies. I know it's not cool to say that you like trashy movies like Scream, but I now realize how much Scream is much smarter than it looks, especially back in the 90s. It's not highbrow cinema smart or indie smart by any means, but it's playing into the meta aspect really, really well, and in ways that are in your face, but also in ways that are more subtle. Scream is a slasher movie that is making fun of slasher movie tropes without inherently breaking the fourth wall, while at the same time putting these mirrors in front of the viewer's face and sort of exposing the viewers to their own cliches. I don't know, it's like making fun of movies but making fun of movie goers, all while being the exact same movie you're making fun of and without flinching for a second. I think it's brilliant in that sense. I'm generally a sucker for meta narratives in movies because they can add so much subtle depth. And then Scream 2 actually takes it further, having in the movie a movie called Stab being made about the events that happened in Scream 1 and adding another layer of a movie within a movie about another movie and playing the self-aware sequel tropes. If you watch these movies now, one of the first things you'll notice is that, especially in the first one, literally every single cut to a new scene has a loud and creepy musical bang to it, like they're commanding you to be scared even if nothing is happening, but in this over-the-top ridiculous way. It's so obviously self-aware, it's actually funny. And another layer to the whole thing is that Scream was created by Wes Craven, who was a young director in the 70s creating some classic horror films and especially known for one of the biggest slasher franchises of all time, A Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger. So in the 90s, he kind of brought back a dying genre that he was part of 15 years earlier and rekindled it with a lot of satire and self-awareness. I love it. Anyway, now I look at the mask and I think to myself, man, that's actually a sick fucking mask. It's just such a classic. It's October. Halloween is around the corner. I already started this month with the Goosebumps book cover. Why don't I just keep the horror theme throughout the whole month? And I've already spent way too long on the fellow kettle video for literally no reason. So I just want to make something simple and fun. I thought of making the whole character, and throughout the video, I kind of kept being tempted to maybe I'll just make the torso, or maybe I'll just add the hands and a cape. But my left brain kept me on track and reminded me not everything has to be a complete character from top to bottom. Just make the mask. you like this content and want to support the channel, feel free to check out my Patreon or membership where you can find these project files, watch these videos with no ads, get free products from the store, as well as other cool perks, but mostly help me make more and better content for y'all. Also, you can buy this model, as well as other material and model packs on my new plastic Gumroad, as well as prints and pins I made on the Pink Eye Gumroad. And I totally understand that not everyone can support that way, but even subscribing and liking the video helps the channel, or giving me a follow on Instagram at ojang or the channel at Brand New Plastic. And if you want to help build a community, share your work, and just fuck around, join our Discord. I'll leave the links in the description. Either way, I really appreciate you. Whenever I start something in this state of mind of, this is going to be simple, I always tend to oversimplify it and ignore important features. Like here, I should have paid a bit more attention to the way the mask is connecting to the inside headscarf that wraps around the back of the head. But I was scared of paying too much attention to it, especially since you're not even going to be able to see it. Yeah, I don't know. Again, it comes down to experience and knowing how to distribute your attention. Like the mask itself has so little major sculpting details, it leaves you with this feeling that like, wait, is this it? Like, what am I missing? And you kind of end up missing the subtle volumes and proportions and shit like that. Ended up going back to the sculpture a few times to change some subtle stuff like the back of his mouth and the length of his mouth and the sides of his like temple, all sorts of stuff like that I didn't get right the first time. At this point, I didn't like the hood, so I remade it. Yeah, again, it's funny how you think you can just throw a quick hood on, like, what? It's a simple hood. They all look the same. And yet, for some reason, once you're done, you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. So yeah, I felt like I had to add the upper torso part to just get a better feel for everything. I don't know. I guess that's why the concept of a bust exists, because it feels weird when the head is just hovering in the air. The cloth brushes work really nice. I never really worked with them, so I'm not that used to them. But wow, I wish cinema had these brushes. And there you go, you just caught me in 4K trying to create a whole cape and start the body before I changed my mind and decided to just focus on the mask. But I kept that bust. Honestly, man, I should have just went in and took it more seriously. I was so focused on the mask itself, I totally neglected the other parts. But then again, I don't know, maybe it's smart to just focus on the part that is the most important part, especially since I knew I was going to use a lot of dark shadows, so all the details in the fabrics, which was going to be dark anyway, would just disappear into the darkness. Yeah, I don't know. Cloth is tricky. I think the cloth brushes can only get you so far, but what they bring in realism, they lack in control. So a little cloth brushing, then some cloth alphas, and finish the rest with manually sculpting the flow of the details. Again, if I knew you'll see all this cloth and that would be like an important feature, I would have paid much more attention to it. Then I go Z it to Cinema 4D and quickly unwrap it. I knew I needed a lot of resolution on the front of the face, so I decided to split the UV into 2 tiles. One whole tile for the face and another tile for all the rest. Then before sending it to Substance Painter, I fixed up a few things that bothered me in the face. That's just gonna keep happening because I'll keep seeing more and more sculptural issues as I move along with this. So in Substance, this is the interesting part because if you saw the new Scream, the mask is much more scuffy and worn out, which I think is just one of those tropes of our time, adding a ton of texture and details. They did the same with the Michael Myers mask in the new Halloween. I honestly think the 3D world has influenced that look since 3D artists love to add detail, not only because they can, and the details are interesting, but mostly because it's way harder to make a clean surface look realistic. The more details you add, the more you hide the fact that this is a simulation. And then the real world of special effects is getting inspired by these looks as well. Anyway, I love the new scuffed look. It's not too overwhelming, and it's not as campy as the clean white plastic of the original mask. I really overdid the rough textures though in Substance because it's a bit harder to tell how it's going to end up looking in Octane. But you can always just tone it down in Octane, I guess. I used a lot of tinted noises instead of solid albedo colors and painted in manually some different colors for that dirty look. Layered a bunch of different noises for the bump textures and then painted over them to tone them down a bit on some parts, but also added more specific cracks and tears manually. I also added a rock material, but really toned it down and blended it with the other layers. And I didn't like the manual cracks I was adding, so I tried it again. But I don't know, I kept liking it for some moments, but then not liking it at some other moments. But it really helped when I kept adding more color variations inside all these manually painted cracks. For that inner headscarf and the hood, I just used weave texture, made it all black with a little bit of added color variation on top, nothing fancy. But like, I kept adding more and more details, and some weren't as subtle as they should have been. Before I knew it, I ended up with an extremely rough texture, almost like a rock texture, and I realized I'm kind of losing the plot here. So once I put everything together in Octane, the first thing I did was to lower the opacity of the normal map I created in Substance to tone down some of the bump roughness. And I started testing out different light setups, I wanted it to be very low-key and very natural, so I tested out different high-contrast indoor HDRIs with a lot of top lighting, and I mean, I kind of love it already. The UV unwrapping of the hood created these two different directions of the two halves of the hood, which was exaggerated by the glossiness. This texture came out a bit glossy out of Substance, so I ended up completely removing the glossiness and made it super rough, but added some sheen, which really worked well. I tried adding an area light for some extra detail, and as you can see, I keep adjusting the maps I exported from Substance, mostly changing the gamma because things don't look exactly as you expected them to look straight out of Substance. There was this glitch here, but it's because I forgot to update the two different tiles for the normal maps. And yeah, then I just tested out different LUTs. Since I wanted it to be a bit cinematic, I literally never deal with LUTs, but it was fun just seeing what's possible without having to render it out and do it in post. I don't bake the LUT look into the render, I'm just trying to gauge how the lights and shadows react to different color grading. It was a bit tricky to get the inside of the mask to have a bit less shadow while also getting everything else to be in the shadow, while also keeping the background not too dark so you can get the sense of like a realistic room and not a pitch black environment. And once I started moving around the mask, I realized the sides of the mask are honestly really off. In reality, the white mask gets cut right after the eye part on the sides, on the temples, so you don't see much of the side profile of the white mask. And it made it look just off, so I had to go and fix it in ZBrush. First, the hood was pulled back too much, so I pulled it in to cast more shadows on the face. But most importantly, I wanted to pull some of the black headscarf in to hide all the temple and forehead parts of the white mask. I knew it didn't have to be a huge change, just to pull them in enough to cut out all those white parts of the sides. Didn't need to unwrap it again or anything. And sometimes for some very subtle sculpting changes, I just use the sculpt brushes in Cinema to move things around. Yep, and after a few tiny and subtle light changes, this is the final results. I mean, it is what it is. It works for me. There's a lot of wonkiness here, but it serves its purpose. I just wanted to get that mask out there, and I think it looks super cool. I want to take this kind of fun opportunity and use the rest of October for some more horror-themed sculptures. I'm far from a horror fan, but there's some crazy iconic horror characters that seem super fun to sculpt. And you know, I do absolutely love the new subversive horror movies, or what I like to call anti-horror films, by new directors like Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, and even Jordan Peele. That's a whole spiel though, so I won't go into that, but man, it would be cool to sculpt something out of their movies. I already have a bunch of ideas. Anyway, if you want to buy this model, you can find it on my Gumroad. I mean, there's nothing incredible here, but if you're interested in the ZBrush tool or the Substance Painter project file, you can find it there. Or subscribe to my Patreon and get these project files for free. And a big shout out to all my patrons and members you see on the screen right now. To me, you're all the final girls. I love you. Have a great day. Peace.